Marcus Chen woke up unable to move. Something warm rested on his chest. Something breathing. Slow. Controlled. Not human. His eyes opened to violet light filtering through living crystal walls. The ceiling shimmered softly like frozen lightning. The air smelled faintly of ozone and flowers he did not recognize. And then he realized. Silver-white hair spilled across his shoulder. A head rested just below his chin. Long, elegant fingers were lightly curled against his side. The alien queen of the Velthroni Empire was asleep on him. 12 hours ago, she had sentenced him to death. Now she was using him as a pillow. Your heart rate increased, she murmured softly, eyes still closed. You are awake. Marcus swallowed carefully. Your Majesty, I can't feel my left arm. That is acceptable, she replied calmly. Do not move. The court does not wake for 3 cycles. Her voice was quiet. Not cold like in the throne room. Not sharp. Soft. He stared at the glowing walls and tried to understand how his life had collapsed into this moment. 16 hours earlier, he had stood in chains. The grand crystal hall had been full of nobles, tall, luminous beings with amethyst eyes and skin that glowed faintly beneath the surface. They looked at humans the way humans looked at fragile glass. Interesting. Temporary. Replaceable. Queen Svanai the 17th had sat upon her living throne, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. The human delegation offers alliance, Ambassador Reyes had said bravely. Laughter followed. Velthroni laughter was beautiful and cruel. The Queen's eyes had found Marcus. Marcus Chen, she had said. You have been silent. He should have stayed silent. But he was tired. Tired of watching them mock humanity. Tired of pretending that mortality meant weakness. You don't reject us because we are weak, he had said clearly. You reject us because you fear what it means if we are not. Silence. Then outrage. He had been arrested immediately. Sentenced. Public execution. But instead of execution, she had come to his cell alone. And everything changed. On the balcony that night, beneath twin moons, she told him the truth. The Velthroni are dying, she said. Not war. Not disease. Extinction. Their birth rates had collapsed centuries ago. Genetic stagnation. Emotional detachment. Cultural isolation. They had perfected survival. And forgotten how to live. You humans burn brightly, she had told him quietly. You love knowing it will hurt. You hope knowing you will die. She had looked at him differently then. Not as prey. Not as inferior. As something rare. She offered him a choice. Stay. Not as prisoner. As advisor. As someone who would speak honestly. He said yes. And that yes changed everything. Months passed in secrecy. Officially, Marcus Chen had been exiled. In truth, he met the Queen every night. They walked through bioluminescent gardens. She asked strange questions. What does grief feel like? How do humans forgive? Why do you touch so freely? He explained. She listened like someone starving. Among her people, touch was ritual, ceremonial, strategic, never casual, never affectionate. She had ruled for 200 cycles. No one had ever held her hand without purpose. Until Marcus did. The first time was an accident. She was shaking after a council confrontation. Threats of forced bonding. Political pressure. Demands for an heir. Marcus crossed the room without thinking. He took her hand. She froze. But she did not pull away. Her fingers slowly tightened around his. Silver tears slid down her glowing cheeks. That night changed something between them. After that, touch became language. Small. Private. Revolutionary. He would steady her shoulder during tense reports. She would brush her fingers across his when passing data tablets. Each contact was careful. Intentional. Sacred. And dangerous. Because the court began to notice. The assassination attempt came during the stellar convergence. 3 moons aligned. Sacred night. The palace vibrated with harmonic resonance. Marcus heard her scream. Not fear. Rage. He ran. Her chamber doors were shattered. 2 assassins lay broken on the floor. Lord Velkari stood at the doorway, ceremonial blade in hand. He blamed Marcus instantly. Of course he did. Humans were convenient scapegoats. Velkari lunged. Marcus reacted on instinct. Old military training returned. He tackled the noble. The blade cut deep across his ribs. Pain exploded. They struggled. Velkari was stronger. Faster. Velthroni physiology was superior in almost every measurable way. But Marcus had something else. He did not hesitate. He fought like someone who had already accepted death. Velkari tightened his grip around Marcus's throat. "You are nothing," the noble hissed. Marcus gasped. "She doesn't need perfection," he choked. "She needs loyalty." Light burst behind them. Velkari screamed. When Marcus could see again, the noble was ash. The queen stood over him, hands glowing with lethal energy. Then she saw the blood. So much blood. Her composure shattered. She fell to her knees beside him. "You are dying," she whispered. "Pretty sure that's how it works," he managed weakly. Her hands pressed desperately against his wound. "I forbid you to die." He smiled faintly. "Can't argue with royalty." Darkness swallowed him. He should not have survived. Human bodies were not built for that kind of damage. But he did. 3 cycles later, he woke in the healing chamber. She had not left his side. Her eyes were red from sleeplessness. "I researched the human word," she said quietly. "Which one?" "Love." He blinked. "And?" "It means being profoundly invested in another's existence." She leaned closer. "I am profoundly invested in yours." His chest tightened. "That sounds accurate." She kissed him then. Careful. Learning. Trembling. It was not political. Not strategic. Not planned. It was real. And real things are dangerous. The council erupted when she announced their bonding. Outrage. Threats. Ancient laws cited. But she did not bend. The ceremony took place in the same hall where he had been sentenced to die. The irony was not lost on anyone. Hands bound by luminous cord. Truths spoken openly. "I choose you," she declared before the Empire. "I choose you," he answered. Light wrapped around them. The bond formed. Something ancient shifted. For the first time in centuries, hope entered the Velthroni court. But hope is fragile. And the galaxy was watching. Because the Krell hegemony had noticed the instability. They had waited generations for Velthroni weakness. And now, a human stood beside their queen. To enemies, that looked like opportunity. To humanity, it looked like destiny. And destiny was coming. The invasion began without warning. No declaration. No threats. No speeches. Krell warships tore open Velthroni space like claws ripping silk. Across the capital planet, crystal towers began to vibrate with emergency resonance. The sound was deep and haunting, like the planet itself was afraid. Marcus Chen woke instantly. Svanai was already standing beside the balcony, silver hair glowing faintly in the dark. "The outer defense grid has collapsed," she said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Marcus stood, heart pounding. "How long?" 2 hours until they reached the inner system. 2 hours. For a species that planned centuries ahead, 2 hours was nothing. For humans, 2 hours was everything. The war chamber filled quickly. Velthroni admirals projected holographic formations, perfect arcs, flawless geometry, traditional defensive patterns used for generations. Marcus stared at them. "They're going to die," he said plainly. Silence fell. One admiral turned slowly. "Explain, human." "You fight like art," Marcus continued. "The Krell fight like predators. They don't care about symmetry. They don't care about honor. They want extinction." Murmurs filled the chamber. Svanai raised her hand. Silence returned. "Speak freely," she commanded him. He stepped forward. "You must break formation. Scatter your ships. Use irregular attack paths. Human fleets survive because we don't fight clean. We fight to win. An elder general frowned. Chaos invites weakness. Marcus shook his head. Predictability invites death. Svanai's eyes burned with decision. Implement his strategy, she ordered. Several commanders hesitated. Her voice hardened. That is not a request. When the Krell fleet entered the inner system, they expected elegant resistance. They expected tradition. They expected pride. Instead, Velthroni ships broke apart into scattered units. Small wings. Unexpected angles. Hit-and-run attacks. Human-coded signal scrambling distorted Krell targeting systems. Velthroni ships that had once moved like dancers now moved like storms. The Krell advance slowed. Then faltered. For the first time in recorded history, Velthroni commanders heard something new over comm channels. Krell confusion. Marcus stood beside Svanai on the command platform. She watched battle reports flash across the air. You were correct, she said quietly. Humans survive because we adapt, he replied. We don't assume tomorrow will look like yesterday. Her gaze shifted toward him. That is both terrifying and impressive. He smiled faintly. We call it stubbornness. The first wave was destroyed. But victory did not come clean. Outer colonies burned. Civilian towers collapsed. Velthroni citizens, long sheltered from true war, felt fear for the first time in centuries. Fear can break a civilization. Or change it. The Council demanded immediate retaliation. Full power deployment. Ancient superweapons locked beneath the planet's crust. Marcus listened. Then shook his head. If you fire those weapons, you destroy half your own orbital infrastructure. We will survive, a noble insisted. Marcus looked at him. Survival isn't enough anymore. The words hung in the chamber. Svanai felt it through their bond, the human fire inside him. He was not afraid of extinction. He was afraid of becoming cold. During the third battle cycle, Svanai staggered. Marcus caught her. Through their bond he felt it, something new. Not weakness. Not injury. Change. The royal healers examined her immediately. The chamber was silent. Finally, the eldest healer bowed deeply. The bonding was not symbolic alone, she said. Genetic integration has begun. Marcus felt his breath stop. Svanai's luminous eyes widened. You mean? Yes, the healer confirmed softly. The royal line continues. The room filled with stunned whispers. Velthroni and human DNA had merged successfully. Against science. Against expectation. Against centuries of genetic stagnation. It was not just a child. It was evolution. News spread through the capital faster than any military update. Hope entered the streets. Hope changed morale. Soldiers fought differently when they believed the future existed. The Krell launched their final assault 2 cycles later. A massive dread fleet aimed directly at the capital. If it reached orbit, the planet would burn. Velthroni admirals prepared full planetary shields. Marcus studied the incoming formation. They're overconfident, he said quietly. Svanai glanced at him. You see weakness. I see habit. He turned to the projection of the capital's crystal spires. Velthroni architecture was not decorative. It was harmonic. Each spire resonated at specific energy frequencies tied to planetary defense systems. What if, Marcus said slowly, the planet itself fights? The chamber stilled. He explained quickly. Human engineers had studied resonance physics for mining colonies. If the crystal towers synchronized at amplified harmonic frequency, they could release a planetary shockwave. Not a weapon. A disruption field. It would overload Krell shields mid-orbit. It had never been attempted. It could fracture the spires permanently. It could destabilize half the capital. It could fail. Svanai looked at him. Will it work? He met her eyes. It's never been done before. She smiled slightly. That appears to be your specialty. She turned to the council. Prepare harmonic convergence. The sky darkened as the Krell fleet descended. Thousands of black ships blotting out starlight. Citizens gathered in the streets below Crystal Towers. No panic. Just waiting. Svanai stood at the central spire platform. Marcus beside her. Their hands intertwined. Through the bond he felt her fear. Not for herself. For their unborn child. For her people. For him. "You trust me?" he asked softly. "I chose you," she replied. That was answer enough. The Krell fleet entered optimal firing range. Weapons charged. Orbital bombardment primed. Svanai raised her hand. "Now." The crystal spires began to sing. Low at first. Then rising. Resonance layered upon resonance. The planet vibrated. Light surged through crystalline veins beneath the surface. Marcus felt the frequency in his bones. The sound became blinding. Then, release. A massive harmonic pulse exploded outward from the planet. Invisible. Silent in vacuum. But devastating. Krell shields flickered. Then shattered. Energy systems overloaded instantly. Ships fractured mid-space. Explosions rippled like a chain reaction across the fleet. The Krell Command dreadnought tried to retreat. Too late. Its core destabilized and collapsed inward. Within 60 seconds, the invasion fleet was debris. The sky cleared. Stars returned. The capital still stood. Silence filled the chamber. Then, Velthroni commanders began to laugh. Not cruel laughter. Not arrogant laughter. Relieved laughter. They had never fought like this. They had never needed to. The war ended that day. Not because Velthroni were stronger. Not because humans were superior. But because together, they were unpredictable. And unpredictability defeats empires built on domination. Weeks later, reconstruction began. The council's tone shifted. Where they once saw contamination, they now saw salvation. Birth rates slowly increased across the population. Not magically. Not instantly. But something psychological had changed. Citizens began forming bonds outside rigid tradition. Emotional connection returned. Touch returned. Hope returned. Marcus stood once more on the balcony where everything began. Svanai leaned beside him, her hand resting over her stomach. "You changed us," she said quietly. He shook his head. "You were ready to change. I just annoyed you enough to admit it." She laughed softly. The sound was no longer rare. "I once thought humans were fragile," she said. "We are." "Yes," she agreed. "But fragility does not mean weakness. It means you understand time." He looked at her. "You fear my mortality." "I do." He placed her hand over his heart. "Then let's make the time count." Months passed. The child was born beneath crystal light. The entire empire watched. Not in fear. In wonder. The infant's skin shimmered faintly. Amethyst eyes. Human heartbeat. Velthroni neural glow. Proof that extinction was not destiny. Svanai held the child first. Then placed the newborn in Marcus's arms. "You were sentenced to die in this palace," she whispered. He looked down at his child. "Guess I decided to stay." Years later, peace stabilized the sector. Human-Velthroni alliance became the strongest force in nearby systems. The Krell never returned. They had learned something important. Humans do not win because they are stronger. They win because they refuse to quit. And once humans bond, they fight like fire protecting oxygen. One quiet evening, Marcus lay back in their chamber. Svanai rested against his chest again. Full circle. Silver hair across his shoulder. Her voice softer now with age and peace. "You are aging," she observed. "That's rude." "It frightens me less now," she admitted. "Why?" "Because you taught me something." "What?" "That life is not measured by length. It is measured by intensity." He smiled. "Love is intensity." She nodded. "And I remain profoundly invested in your existence." He closed his eyes. "Good. I plan to exist loudly." Outside, crystal towers shimmered beneath twin moons. Their child's laughter echoed through palace halls. The empire lived. Not because it was perfect. Not because it was pure. But because it dared to change. And sometimes, that is the most powerful weapon in the galaxy.